Hi, and welcome to the Relentless Marketing and PR Podcast. With me, as always, is Katie Atkinson.
And with me, as always, is Lauren Reed. We're two marketers and entrepreneurs, and we're here to share our philosophy on figuring it out, moving forward, and never giving in.
We have a very special guest with us today, and that is Todd Schlosser.
Yes.
Did I say that right?
You did, yeah.
Great. So, Todd, we are really excited to be interviewing you. Todd is the behind-the-scenes man who has been making our podcast happen along with his business partner, Chris.
Yes.
We're here today from Fighters Boxing Gym, which is always fun and exciting. So we're going to have a little verbal spar.
I threatened to do the whole interview with gloves on and not acknowledge it, but we decided against it.
So Todd, talking about your business, so you are producing our podcast along with Chris, like we said.
Yeah.
And you're one of the only businesses that I know about in town or that exists that does this. You all have helped us from sort of start to finish to concept our podcast, put the actual details to it, the branding, the music, the editing, all that stuff. So tell us what made you all start this business and a little bit about what you do.
Chris and I put our sort of skill sets together and we could sort of handle all of it. And we realized that no one was sort of an end-to-end sort of easy button solution for it all. So we can do, branding, we can do music, we can do the production side of it. I know how to set up cameras and edit and all that stuff. So we just figured, why not offer this to people? And when we started offering, we quickly got a lot of clients to come in and say, yeah, I want to do a podcast, but I also want to incorporate video. So we can do both. We can hit people wherever they are, whether it be on their phone with just a podcast or like on YouTube with video. So that's sort of where the idea came from. It was really just he and I putting our heads together and what can we do, and then should we do this? And we decided to sort of venture into it.
Yeah, and you can do the music because you all used to be in a band together, a boy band together.
Yeah.
A boy band.
Well,
I want to call it a boy band.
Well,
just because it was all boys, right?
It was all boys.
Actually, no, we had a lead guitarist who was a female. Yeah.
Okay. Well, on the days when she wasn't there, they were in a boy band.
No, we never had frosted tips, but we did tour quite a bit. Well, that's just going gray, really.
I'm kidding.
Yeah.
He doesn't have frosted tips. I'm just trying to drive you guys to our video.
Right.
So you used to be in a band together.
Yeah, we played music and still sort of do on the side, just for fun. Yeah.
And our intro music. Yeah.
Well, yeah, we in
mixed
fact,
that together.
Chris wrote that and wrote it, I think just in an evening. He wrote like 4 or 5 pieces and we'd send them over to you guys, and you guys picked the one you want. It was my favorite one because it was sort of heist music style. I don't know if you guys remember the other ones, but they weren't nearly as fun. I like this one the best.
So I think if you want to talk a little bit more about that, about all of the pieces that you all combine to give that end-to-end solution. So the music, but I think people maybe don't understand all that goes into creating a podcast.
We didn't.
Yeah, it isn't bigger. And I think you guys noticed when we had our first meeting, it was a much bigger thing than maybe you originally, when you had the idea of, let me start a podcast. And then you sort of roped Katie in on it. In our first meeting, we did sort of talk about, okay, if you want to start a podcast, here are like the things that you need. And that is, a name or branding, right? So you need not only a name, but a great logo that sort of catches the eye and makes someone want to click on your thumbnail to listen to it. You need music. You need to know how you're going to, what style is it? Is it interview? Is it just you two talking about whatever? And I can't tell you how many times we talk to potential clients that want to start a podcast, and we'll have that initial interview with them or sort of a pre-meeting. And we ask them, so why do you want to start a podcast? And they'll say things like, well, I just have really funny conversations with my friends.
Don't we all?
And everyone thinks they do. But do you want to listen to just some random person's funny conversation with their friends? No. I think that the most important thing that I want to hear when I have these meetings with clients or potential clients is, what value can they provide? And that's when I met with you guys, I realized that you guys, first off, are a lot of fun to listen to. You're both fun and silly, and you sort of yes and each other, which I think is very important in a friendship.
I like that. We
try to yes and each other.
I have this joke about Chris, my business partner. I think that one day we'll just end up getting arrested for bank robbery just because we've yes-anded the joke a little bit too far.
We have a really good attorney.
That is, we'll have to get that. We're going to need that at some point. And also, you guys know a lot about both marketing and PR. So not only can you be enjoyable and lovely and a lot of fun to listen to, but you can also provide an immense amount of value to those listeners. So it's not just about being funny or looking great. It's also, what value can you provide? Because you're not going to build an audience if they're not receiving any value.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So you produce a lot of podcasts, and you have a podcast that you're in.
I do, yes.
So tell us a little bit about the perspectives that those other podcasts that you produce bring and why they're unique and your podcast that I think is a really cool idea as well.
So I'll sort of back into my podcast, but I produce sort of a health and wellness podcast, sort of a mental health, physical wellness called Get Happy, Be Fit. I produce a podcast with Senator Bill Frist called A Second Opinion with Senator Bill Frist, MD. And that one is sort of his look at both, or really all policy, healthcare, and innovation. So where's healthcare going in the future? Stuff like that. And that was our first podcast client. The first time we'd ever pitched anybody, it was Senator Bill Frist.
Oh, wow.
And I walked in there by myself because Chris was sick, and there were other people in the room pitching him. So it wasn't just us in the pitch meeting. There were 3 different companies in the pitch meeting. And some of the pitches were real bad, and ours was great, and he loved it.
So you saw everybody pitch?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we all went into the same room, and we all talked, and it was very interesting.
That's a big first client.
Yeah, it was great, and it has been a lot of fun. Like, I'm sort of a government nerd anyway, so I knew who Bill Frist was. I knew that he was the majority leader of the U.S. Senate for 4 years, practiced medicine for 20 years. I already knew a lot of this because I'm a nerd, so like, going in there was just a huge honor for me.
Yeah.
And then when he decided to go with ours, which if you had heard the other pitches, I understood why he went with ours. Because he was being pitched by people who didn't really know how to do podcasts.
Right.
It was just people who wanted to work with Bill Frist.
Right.
And I have worked in the space for 10 years and have done it badly for so long that I sort of figured out how to do it.
How did you get started?
So yeah, I got started many, many years ago, about 10 years ago now, when a friend approached me when we were in school and said, hey, I want to start a podcast. And it was one of the podcasts that I would not do now because it was just funny conversations with a friend. But he didn't know how to do it, and I didn't know how to do it, but I wanted to do it, so I figured it out. Same thing with video editing. So we didn't do video at that point. I incorporated all the video stuff later, and I wanted to learn how to video edit. So I just went to YouTube and typed in, the first thing I ever typed in was how to do a 3-camera interview. And then I watched a 12-minute video on how to shoot a 3-camera interview. And a lot of the basics that we use in every shoot came from stuff I learned that day. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you incorporate more techniques whether you're on the job or just learning more stuff, but I didn't go to school for this.
Do they have, I mean, now they probably do.
Like, that would
they
probably be
didn't.
like the convergence journalism degree that one of our recent hires came to us with a degree in convergence journalism, which really pulls in all aspects of communication.
Yeah.
So she's got design skills, she's got the journalism skills, video editing, photography, PR skills. It was really interesting.
When we're looking to work with someone who maybe we want to bring on or use as a contractor, I don't really care so much what you went to school for. I really don't care. Did you go to school? Cool. Or what have you done? So I want to see a portfolio, because I didn't go to school for anything that we do. Chris didn't go to school for a lot of the stuff that we do. We had to learn it because clients will ask us, hey, can you do this? And we always say yes to them because we know that we're smart enough to figure it out. Because Google exists and YouTube exists. And one thing that Chris always says in the office is, have you exhausted all your options to figure this out or to be able to do this? And the answer to that is always no.
We always say, we're always like, as we have left any stone unturned.
Exactly. So it's that same mindset. So when we look for contractors or employees or even to some extent clients, like, are these people that are willing to learn? Are they going to rest on, well, I wasn't taught that?
Right. Oh, yeah.
You know, if you rest on I wasn't taught that, you're not going to be a great employee or a great client or a great, business owner.
So, but your podcast.
So yeah,
the one that I keep talking about, because I'm like, oh, this is me. So
this happened in 2018. I started a podcast with some friends of mine because I hate horror movies and I'm very, very scared of horror movies.
Terrifying.
So am I, and haunted houses in person.
Me too.
Okay, me too. So let's talk really quickly.
Can I just say, haunted houses are the perfect setup for an actual murder.
Someone got stabbed in one last year.
I know. I sent it to my husband. You think it's a fake chainsaw, but no, that bitch is real.
Yeah.
And then you're dead. Because you went to a haunted house for $20. Yeah, no, I just don't do it.
I went to one for the first time last year, and it was terrifying. Because it was like a meetup, and we had fans come, and it was a whole thing. But yeah, so the podcast is The Horror Virgin, which is me, and it really is us just like watching horror movies, and then we sort of make fun of me and them together. But yeah, we've done almost 100 episodes. Actually, by the time this comes out, it'll be 100 episodes.
Okay, so I need to watch that.
So what's the scariest movie you've ever seen?
Easy. That's an easy answer. Hereditary is the scariest movie I've ever seen in my life. Okay. We saw it in the theater. It was our 3rd episode, so we didn't really have fans yet because it takes a while to build up to that. But it was just the three hosts in a row, and I'm not going to ruin it, but there's a very, very scary part very close to the end, and I stood up and yelled the F word, and then slowly sat back down. And then everyone in the theater, it was a very tense moment, and like when the tension died down, everyone started laughing at me. They just like, you heard pockets of laughter, and that is basically the show.
So you're just like filming in the theater?
No, we don't film in the theater because that would be illegal because you can't film that. But we will record right after we watch the movie.
Okay.
So a lot of times we have a Patreon and people we make money doing it now. We run ads and stuff. So we sort of have a budget. So we built a studio in one of the co-host house. So we have like professional microphones in a studio and but all of that ties into one of my beliefs, and that's if you want people to care about your content, you're going to have to give it to them.
Right.
So I have worked for 10 years in what I call free content, but when I say free, I mean I'm giving them what other people might charge for and figuring out a payment model so I make money.
Okay.
But like the podcast, anyone can listen to my podcast for free. Now, I'm making money sort of like TV makes money because they're listening to ads. We also have a Patreon set up so that people who really are like super fans of the show can get extra perks if they pay us. We have a good number of people that pay us $50 a month for essentially something they get for free, because we've built that brand loyalty with them and they like us that much. We had someone drive 10 hours to come watch a movie with me.
Wow.
So yeah, like that's
cool.
Yeah.
Well, can I watch a movie with you? Can I come next time?
I mean, yeah, we have meetups. I think the next one's in March. Although you'd have to watch a scary movie. That's how I feel about it.
That seems like torture to me. I'm not
It is, and I will to this day openly admit that I do not like watching the movie, but I really like
talking about how
I really like sort of making fun of them or making fun of myself. Yeah, I have to be able to make fun of myself, obviously, but you know, I really like the sort of community that's grown up around it.
If a listener is considering starting a podcast for the brand that they represent, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
What are some reasons to start one? What are some reasons not to? And some things to watch out for.
So, okay, if you want to start a podcast, I would always be thinking about what value you can provide. So like the example I gave with you two, you guys sort of have everything I think you need to start a podcast, which is why we were so excited to start yours. And that was, you know, the value that you provide is the marketing and PR knowledge. And one of the things that we talked about early on, I think it was you guys that came up with the idea of it, was let's end everyone with a key takeaway.
Right.
Because I have heard you mention as I'm editing these episodes that you're very big on, I don't want it to be theoretical.
Right.
I want to give practical knowledge that they could feasibly,
action items.
Yeah, that they could feasibly like practice in their job day to day, which I think is great. So,
which is the definition of value, right?
Right.
Right. And I just now like, it just hit me that like, he said to like watch every episode, like that feels very vulnerable that he's like editing our episodes and like, oh, Lauren said something stupid there, and
that's why we don't watch that part.
Right. True story. I've never listened to or watched one of these episodes. I let Katie give the sign off because I don't watch myself.
And for some people that works. One of my co-hosts does not like watching them, but Senator Frist watches every one of them, and he watches them all the way through and will give you very specific notes. So like, you know, there's a lot of trust that goes on there. So I thank you for trusting me enough to know that I'm good enough at editing these podcasts. But that is, you know, something that some people do care about. Although, just to get back to your question of why shouldn't you start a podcast? If it's only going to be to promote your brand and it's just like you talking about how great your brand is, people outside your company and probably most people in your company aren't going to care about that.
Right. Yeah.
So you want to, like, we do a podcast for another healthcare company, and they use it more as a business development tool because they want to target surgeons to sell surgeons their services. Right. So what I do is I go in there and I interview the surgeons, but I never really mention their company.
Right.
We bring a business development rep with us and they meet them. They're the point of contact for the podcast episode that they're on. So I send the edit to the business development representative and then they reach out to the potential client, building the relationship there. So last year we provided about $250,000 worth of value to that company because of sales they made because of the podcast connections we connected to for them. Mm-hmm. So like there's two different routes. Like my podcast, The Horror Version, took a listenership route. We tried to build up a listenership and then sell commercials, Patreon type stuff. Other companies sort of choose a business development model, which we can sort of help you brainstorm out how to do.
Yeah, and going back to why you shouldn't do it, if it's so self-serving, everybody thinks they're funny. It's like everybody thinks their baby's cute.
Right, but a lot of times they're not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's mine.
Yeah,
yours are
you
adorable.
Have cute kids.
Okay, thank you.
In truth, I've never seen them, but I'm sure they are. Yeah.
She does have really cute kids.
You have to say that.
Yeah. No, but she does.
No, that's the thing about Katie. She would tell me if
I don't think I would, but
oh well, maybe they're not then.
No, I wouldn't be like your kids are not cute, but also you would be able to tell.
Yeah.
If I didn't mean it.
Yeah, I would. Katie, your point about if it's self-serving, it doesn't make sense. That really goes back to the foundation of all PR and marketing, right? It's to build a mutually beneficial relationship with your consumers that drives action.
Yeah.
So that makes really good sense.
Well, like our clients, a lot of times they'll try to prescribe the tactics to us, and they'll say we need to be on Twitter, or we need to be in the New York Times, or whatever it might be. And a lot of times that's an ego play, and it's very self-serving. Whereas we go back to those foundation, the research, the measurement, and then put those tactics to what makes sense for your audience, building the mutually beneficial.
And I would think a question you probably have to ask a lot is, why do you want a podcast? But then explaining that, like, how do you tactfully explain that you're not a good fit for a podcast, or what is your filters there?
So, I mean, it really depends on what the pitch to me is. A lot of times they just say they want to start a podcast, and then we talk to them, and then we can set up okay, here's where you can provide value. Let's find that value lane for you or your organization or whatever it is that you're trying to, promote. And then we just sort of help guide that person who's going to be the host or the hosts to provide that value and stay in that lane. With you guys, you sort of already knew what you wanted to do. So we didn't really have to do it with you guys. So you didn't really see that side.
Because we started at the foundation.
Well, yeah, I mean, and sort of like you were saying about we have clients that want to be in the New York Times and they want to be on Twitter and stuff. Well, why should they be in the New York Times? Why should they be on Twitter? So what are they trying to say on Twitter? Or what have they done that would need them to be in the New York Times? I'm not saying that you don't work with people that do. Obviously you do. But, what can we promote to them? Right?
What's unique.
And it's who are you trying to reach and what is your end goal? Because oftentimes that's not a hit in the New York Times or that's not a podcast or social media campaign.
Right.
So really starting with the beginning and end is key. And we tried to do that with this podcast.
Yeah, I think you guys did. You were very intentional about, what you wanted to do and why you wanted to do it. And then we just came in and helped sort of shape the vision that you already had.
And helped us think about all those little things that we did not think about. So.
Well, and hopefully, and not to sort of elicit a compliment, but hopefully you guys have found it to be sort of an easy experience. And because I feel like you guys have been very good partners and working with us on this. I don't feel like I've done every bit of work myself. Like you guys have done a lot and we've done a lot. And I think it's created what I think is something I'm very proud of that we're a part of.
It's been a great partnership.
And I also think I was talking to Chris about this earlier too. I was thinking I'll think to myself as we've been doing this over the course of a few months now, and I'll be like, well, what about this and what about that? And oh my gosh, we didn't think about this. And then you all came in one day and presented all the things that I was like, oh, what about these things?
Yeah.
Right.
And so it was really helpful because I hope that's how we are for our clients as well. Right. The way that you have gave us the things that we didn't have to think about.
And you've made our lives easier. And that's the thing we always say for our clients. Our job is to make their lives easier and to give them really good results to show to the next layer above.
Yeah.
And take feedback well too, because we can have an honest conversation and say, oh, I don't really like that color or sound or whatever it might be, or I don't like the way I look, which we say a lot.
We say a lot.
It drives me crazy because you guys are both beautiful people. Like it's very easy to make you guys look great.
Thank you.
Let's just say the source material is there, right? Although we have had some conversations with some client or potential clients that we just didn't end up working with because I don't think that they were.
You got a face for radio now.
I was going to say that sort of thing.
No joke. My dad used to say that to me when I was a kid, and I didn't realize it was a cut down until I was like 12, and I was like, "You are a horrible person. Why would you say that to an 8-year-old?" But it's fine. But we have had to sort of walk away from some clients who didn't really. All they wanted to do, a lot of times, all they want to do is promote their business, and there's not a way you can do that effectively. It's not going to achieve the results they really want. Right. And we want to not only be able to produce the podcast, but also give you numbers on why it's effective and be able to tie sales or fresh new clients or whatever that goal is. We want to be able to tie that to the podcast.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Give us your recommendations. What are your favorite podcasts?
I prefer my podcast to be sort of funny and enjoyable. Like sort of like entertainment type podcast. So, and I love movies. So How Did This Get Made is a great, really funny podcast that they watch very, very bad movies. It's sort of a lot like the horror version, except very, very successful. And they're just watching like B movies.
Like the
movies
Razzies
that are not
kinda?
good. Sort of, except I mean, they'll watch some movies that made some money, but just are not good movies.
Okay.
And that's very funny. I also am sort of a political junkie, so I listen to the 538 podcast, and I listen to The Daily and a lot of political podcasts just because I'm a little political nerd. So what are some of your favorite podcasts?
I have a lot of favorite podcasts.
Because you're a 7.
Because I'm a 7 on the Enneagram, and we like lots of things. So I guess Enneagram focused, I love Typology with Ian Morgan Cron, because I feel like it gives me such professional and personal growth, hearing perspectives from other people. I typically only listen to it if it's my number or the number of someone in my life, which is a lot of people, most numbers, because of, we have team members who are almost all of the numbers. We don't have any 5s on our team. So that's one I always listen to and get a lot of good feedback from, or good ideas from, and good business applications. And then just a fun one is This Imagined Life.
Yeah, it's an NPR podcast.
Yeah, and they they tell you the story of someone famous, but before they were famous, and their whole life. And I love it because the first one I listened to, it was kind of bad because within 2 minutes, I'm like, I know who that was. That was Reba McEntire, because I'm a huge Reba fan. And I happened to pull up the one episode that was on her. But it's really cool to kind of be guessing along the way and hear just a different perspective. And that they drop hints, but you don't know for sure until, the last few minutes of who it is. So I love that.
Do you think that was creepy Apple, listening to you, and that's how you ended up with the Reba? I always think everything.
I don't talk about Reba that much, do I?
You do. Your cat was named Reba. I mean,
stop it. Yeah, I was a kid.
Did you like her TV show?
Of course.
She loved it.
I thought it was pretty great. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing not great about Reba McEntire, if I'm being honest, okay? Reba, if you're listening, I love you.
Be on the podcast.
So, Reba, be my podcast guest. We'll tweet that at her.
Yes, we should.
We will.
I like very political, but Love It or Leave It. It's one of my favorite. I know I talk about it all the time, but it's just fun.
Yeah.
They have the best intro music. It's great.
Love it or leave it.
It's Love It or Leave It. Yeah. I just think it's so good.
It is great.
He has great little segments. It's really entertaining.
A lot of the Crooked Media shows are great.
It's also super left-wing, so sorry if that's not your thing. And then another one, Hidden Brain on the NPR is pretty good. I like to listen to that one. It makes me feel smart when I do that. And and then Chelsea Handler. I love Chelsea Handler, and I read her I've read all of her books, but I read her most recent book. She's an Enneagram 8.
Like
hey, Chelsea, you want to be on our podcast?
Be on the podcast.
Yes, I love Chelsea Handler.
Yeah.
And then her podcast that goes along with that, and she explores the Enneagram as well. And
awesome.
Her assistant is a 2, and 8s and 2s.
He was at Zanies the other night.
Oh, really? They're very opposite, and so I found that very interesting because we have some 2s on our team, and so it was.
What is the 2 again?
Listen. The helper.
Okay.
Yeah. So and my mother's a 2 as well.
Right.
So the exact opposite of me.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, we are
I'm not a helper at all.
We're helpful to our clients who pay us.
Absolutely.
Well, Todd, thanks so much for being here
Absolutely.
with us today. We like to, as you know, because you produce this podcast, we like to always give our listeners some key takeaways. And for this one, I think what I'd like to do is put it up on the blog. But is there anything that you'd like to share, just final words of wisdom about just the filters that you really look at when determining is a podcast right for your brand or not?
I would say the first and foremost thing would always be, what value can you provide a listener? So always focus on that. What value can you provide? And then, if you can't do branding and music and production, find people that can. Obviously, we're available to help if you guys need help, but anybody who can do it. I mean, honestly, a lot of big companies already have marketing teams that can do this stuff.
Right.
They should utilize them to do that. But I would really focus on that value proposition that the listener, that you're sort of giving the listener. Because if you have the right value proposition, you're going to build an audience around it.
Yeah, and we'll put a few ways to figure out if you bring value, some questions you should ask yourself, and a lens you should look through up on the blog and in the show notes.
Along with the checklist you just mentioned of music, all of that.
Sure, yeah.
That, I think, like you said, we didn't realize, I never thought, we have to get music produced, right?
Yeah.
I just thought, let's do a podcast, and here's why, but not everything that went into it. So just to reiterate for our listeners, we'll put these in the bonus notes.
The show notes.
Show notes, a link to the blog where it's got everything to consider, just everything you need to know before you get in to a podcast. Well, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's weird to be in front of the camera.
You're usually behind the camera.
Yeah.
So now you know how vulnerable it can be when we're saying things like, hey, does our hair look okay?
Right. I have been thinking the entire time, suck in.
Instead of straight.
Instead of straight, suck in, posture. Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely.